shooting in 23 frames per second, 25 frames per second, 60 frames per second, it depends on the region. So there's something called PAL and something called NTSC. So PAL is a phase alternating line. It's a television video standard used in many countries including Kenya, the UK, Germany, and most of Africa. What is NTSC? NTSC, National Television System Committee. It's a television standard traditional used in US, Canada, Japan, and some other countries. So we are in Africa, we are in Kenya, so tunatumia PAL. Why are you using PAL? So in this region, zinatumia PAL, their power frequency 50 Hz. And this region zinatumia NTSC, their power frequency 60 Hz. Right, so if our power frequency in Kenya is 50 Hz, in our times 2, that's 100 Hz. So in a manner, one flicker in a take 10 milliseconds. Right, so we can't see flicker of the light with our normal eyes, no, but with camera naweza ona flicker. So flicker ina maana, so what is flicker? Flicker, if you have a spoiled bulb, unaona hii bulb inaenda maybe itakuwa spoiled, inakuwa na dim and then inakuwa bright, dim bright, so you can see flicker. So that bulb might get full flicker ya frequency, ya power frequency, that's 100 Hz, easy pattern. So unakuta inakuwa dim and then inakuwa bright. So its frequency in 100 Hz. Now one flicker is 10 milliseconds, right? So if I'm shooting my video in 25 frames per second, 25 divided by 100, that's a 4 cycle. So in 25 frames per second, ina take 4 flicker, full circle to be lightened up. So if you're shooting your frame, your footage 50 frames per second, utakuwa na 2 cycle of flicker. So end of the day, your output haitakuwa na flicker. This is my 80D camera, and I shoot up to 59 frames per second. 59 frames per second, that is 60 frames per second with slow motion. So this is my 80D. I've connected it with my machine here. So let's see. I'm shooting with PAL. Tumesema PAL is Kenya and part of Africa. So if I'm shooting a PAL, so moving record size, so we can see 25 frames per second, 50 frames per second, 25 frames per second. NTSC. So to change our camera to NTSC, this region, US, Canada, and Japan. So tumesema in those area for NTSC, their power frequency 60 Hz. So times 2, that's 120 Hz. So if I'm shooting 29 frames per second, that's 29.9, that's almost 30 frames per second, 23.98, that is 24 frames per second. If it's 59.94, that's 60 frames per second, right? So if I'm shooting this area, like 23.98 frames per second, that's 24 frames per second, and their power frequency is 60 Hz, so that's 120 Hz. So in each frame, if I'm shooting 24 frames per second, inakuwa na 5 cycle. Not a must you understand the math behind the frame rate and the power frequency. You just need to understand if you're in Kenya and part of Africa, you need to shoot 25 frames per second, 50 frames per second, 100 frames per second. If you're in US, Japan, and the part of the world, you need to shoot 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second.